True Crime Page podcast featuring Scott Williams Collins.
Hello and welcome to the True Crime Page podcast. As always, I'm your host Scott Williams Collier. Today, guys, we're going to cover the story of the unsolved murder of single mum Veronica Anderson. Now, this is one of those murder cases that I find really fascinating for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is the murder took place in another place where I spent a lot of time growing up as a kid, and that's the town of Warrington. So I'm fascinated with this case. It's been almost 29 years since Vera Anderson was brutally murdered, and it seems to be a totally random, pointless, senseless murder of a single mother who was very well liked, didn't have any enemies, wasn't involved in anything illegal. She was just a normal, working class, single mum who apparently was very well liked. Vera's daughter, at the time of the murder, had the very horrible, harrowing experience of having to identify a mum when she was just 19 years old and pregnant with her first child. And she also had to break that terrible news to her 7-year-old brother Neil as well. And this crime's completely baffled the police and Vera's family. Nobody can understand why somebody would kill someone like Vera, who was very well liked and didn't have any enemies at all. These tragic events all unfolded on Saturday, the 24th of August in 1991, on what should have been a normal evening, relaxing at home watching TV, with her son Neil upstairs in his bed asleep. At some point in that evening, Vera received a call. Now, whoever was on that phone, and whatever they had to say to Vera, it was enough to prompt her to get up, wake her son up, get him dressed, and ask him to go and knock on the next door neighbour's house. She grabbed her car keys and went outside, and she explained to the neighbour that she had to nip out somewhere. She'd be 10 minutes and she's going to pick up her brother, and she asked if the neighbour would watch her son while she nipped out. The neighbour did mention that it seemed unusual because Vera always referred to her siblings by name. She also witnessed Vera emptying or making room in the back of her Ford Cortina as if she was going to be picking something up. Vera then said to her neighbour, "I'll be back in about 10 minutes. She jumped in a car and she left. Now, this was totally out of character for Vera to do something like that. She wouldn't normally leave the house so late at night, especially on the spur of the moment like that. She left her house about 10:15 in the evening that night. Now, just before Vera was murdered that evening, there was a sighting of her at the Crown and Cushion pub, not far from where she lives in Warrington, in Penketh. A witness said they saw someone fitting Vera's description entering the pub. Apparently she didn't go to the bar to buy a drink. She must have gone in there to meet someone. Another witness saw Vera talking with a white male. They didn't appear to be lovers or somebody who were in a relationship, but they did appear to know each other. The white male that she was with was described as being between 5'8" and 5'11" tall. slim build with sunken temples. He had short, mousy-coloured hair and a moustache. He was also wearing a fawn jacket. He was also said to be in his late 30s, possibly 40s. Now, shortly before closing time, the couple believed to be Vera and a companion had left, and nobody saw them leave the pub. A little later on that evening, around 11 p.m, Vera's car was spotted parked behind the old tannery works on Tannery Lane. That's literally about a 2-minute drive from the Crown and Cushion pub. Headlights were still on the car. Local resident Kenneth Adamson noted that when he was going upstairs to bed in the evening, he popped his head out the window to have a look, and he noticed Vera's car parked there with the headlights still on. The area there at the time was known as a Lover's Lane. It was also an area that was frequented by people that would go there to take recreational drugs, like smoke cannabis, for instance. Because of that reason, it was an area that had regular patrols from the police in the evening. Later on, around 1:30 a.m, Richard and Irene Thomas were walking home from their local social club down Tannery Lane, and they also noticed the car still parked there. They just believed that it was probably a courting couple that were parked there. A little later on, in the early hours, at 3:15 in the morning, a police officer found Vera slumped over the wheel of her car. She'd been in a violent struggle, she'd been strangled, and she'd had her throat slashed. The murderer had left behind 2 items. No doubt he dropped them by accident. He left behind a white cotton Minette glove and a length of white window sash cord. Now, the glove had come into contact with Vera's body, and it had likely been dropped and left behind by accident by the killer. It is possible that these items, the cord and the gloves, may have been things that the killer used in his line of work. The knife that was used to cut Vera's throat has never been recovered. Now, the fact that these items were taken to the meeting in the first place, to me, and I'm sure to many of you as well, it shows a clear intent that this individual was planning to commit a violent assault on Vera Anderson. This shows clear premeditation. Because if it's a total innocent meeting, why would you take cord, gloves and a knife with you? This is something that has been premeditated and planned, and this individual fully intended to commit a violent assault on Vera Anderson, and that's exactly what he did. Now, shortly after Vera's murder, another witness came forward, and this witness said on the night of the killing, he picked up a man in his taxi on Warrington Road at about 1:30 a.m. The location where he picked this gentleman up is about half a mile away from the Crown and Cushion pub and the murder scene. Now, he said that this individual had got into his car. He appeared to have an injured right hand. He had it wrapped in a handkerchief, and his knuckles were grazed. He was wearing a raincoat. He had a moustache, and significantly, he asked the taxi driver to take him back to the Halton View area. Now, Halton View in Widnes is literally 100 yards away from Hadfield Close, where Vera Anderson lived. On Thursday the 29th of August, after Vera's murder, it was reported in the Liverpool Echo newspaper that the police were very anxious to trace and speak to a man and a little girl. Apparently they'd entered the Silhouette wool shop in Halton View around 2 p.m. on Saturday the 24th of August. That's the same day that Vera Anderson was murdered. The man purchased wool, which he said was for Vera Anderson. Now, that story is given credence in the fact that Vera Anderson was a very keen knitter, and she liked to knit bunny rabbits, which she sold to her friends, and she gave to people who had babies. And she used to sell quite a lot of them to her friends, truck drivers, at the rolling truck stop motel in Widnes, where she used to socialise. The man who was in the shop that day was described as being 45 years old, above 6 feet tall, short brown hair with a heavy moustache, wearing a shirt, tie and a jacket. He was also said to be well built, had large hands and possibly spoke with a local accent. The little girl that was with him was described as being 8 years old, with shoulder-length dark hair, with a pretty face. Now, the police have asked this gentleman to come forward because he may have vital information about Vera Anderson's murder. And to the best of my knowledge, he's never come forward to this date. And I find that piece of evidence very interesting. I know that the physical appearance slightly differs from the people in the pub and the taxi driver. But this gentleman had a moustache. The way he was dressed sounds similar to the person that he was seen in the pub. And let's not forget that someone's memory isn't always a very reliable piece of evidence, because as time goes by, sometimes your memory of things can get slightly distorted. So I have to ask myself, and I find this very interesting, could this possibly be the same person that she was seen with in the pub that evening? It was also reported on Friday the 30th of August, that an anonymous person had put up a £3,000 reward for information leading to Mrs. Anderson's murderer being caught. Now, that obviously shows that Vera was a very light person, and her murder had really upset and hurt a lot of people that knew her. Sadly, it's been 29 years since Vera Anderson's murder. It'll be coming up to 29 years anyway on the 24th of August 2020 this year, and her murder still remains unsolved to this day, with no clear motive. What is clear to me is that it was definitely a premeditated murder. The killer took a length of cord, gloves and a knife to a meeting, and he lured her to a quiet, dark, remote place where he wouldn't be disturbed. That shows a clear intent to commit a violent assault on Vera. But the one thing that is not very clear is the motive. Now, Vera was a regular visitor to the roll-in truck stop motel in Widnes, not far from her home, and this was her main outlet for socialising, and she would visit there several times a week. She was friends with many of the truck drivers there, and had in fact had several steady relationships with truck drivers over the years. As far as her friends and family are concerned, she was a good mother, she was very well liked, and she didn't have any enemies. She had a steady boyfriend at the time who was a truck driver, and apparently he stayed with her every Friday. Then he headed back home to the south of England where his family and his wife lived. Now, although Vera was a happy-go-lucky woman who frequented the rolling truck stop and had many truck driver friends, it was said that she was not a man-mad woman. Her daughter Lorraine said that her mother was probably the most popular person at the truck stop. She used to do their washing for them, and if any of them had any problems, they'd go to her with their problems, and she was always happy to help. Now, the more and more I think about this crime, I think that it's quite possible that this crime is a result of jealous rage. I have a feeling that the person who killed Vera was somebody who was probably romantically interested in her, but that feeling was one-sided and hadn't been reciprocated by Vera. But we don't know for certain. Was it something else? It really is a baffling crime. I keep mulling over the different possibilities of why the murder happened. But one thing for sure is that whoever rang Vera that night, whoever they were and whatever they said to her on the phone, it was enough to get her to drag a 7-year-old son out of bed and leave him with a neighbour, then leave the house late at night in the evening, which was totally out of character for Vera to do. And there's also the fact that she made room in a boot. You know, what was she making room for in a boot? Was it to pick wool up from the gentleman that had been in the shop earlier that day to purchase wool for her? Or was it for something else? And like I said, Vera also had to know her killer. There is no way a single mum, a straight-laced single mum like Vera, would just get up and leave the house to go and meet a stranger or to go and meet someone she hardly knew. This had to be somebody that was well known to her, possibly somebody she was having a secret relationship with. It may have been somebody who she struck a friendship up with, maybe somebody who, like I said, had some kind of romantic interest in her, but unfortunately had become bitter and jealous and rageful because that feeling was not reciprocated by Vera. It could also be somebody who wanted to silence her because she may have been having an affair with a married man. And that might exactly be the reason why she chose to lie to her neighbour about picking her brother up that evening. She obviously didn't want her son, Neil, or her neighbour knowing the real reason why she was leaving the house so late in the evening that night. In 1994, after the murder of Julie Finlay, there was some suggestion that Vera's murder could possibly be linked to the unsolved East Lancs Ripper case. Now, personally, I don't think that's the case. The East Lancs Ripper murders were all sexually motivated crimes against prostitutes. Now, there's no evidence of sexual assault on Vera or any signs of robbery as a motive, so it has to be something else. I've wrestled with different theories in my mind about this case. I've considered the possibility that Vera could have possibly got involved in something illegal, or somebody had confided in Vera and told her something that was potentially damaging and then decided to silence her. But I think maybe that's a little bit too far-fetched, especially the fact that Vera's a very well-liked, down-to-earth, straight-laced kind of person. It's very unlikely that that is the case. But, you know, we always have to try and keep an open mind in cases like this. But in reality, I think, personally, and I think the police and the press seem to have a similar kind of idea about this crime, it's more than likely a domestic issue. Like I said, it's probably somebody that has had some kind of romantic involvement with her and the relationship's gone wrong for some reason. Or it may have been somebody who was very jealous and resentful because they were romantically interested in Vera, and that feeling was not reciprocated by Vera, and she was killed as a result of jealous rage. That's basically it today for today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. What I will ask, any of you guys from the Warrington and Widnes area, if you remember this crime, or you've got family and friends who remember it, do us a favour, please share the podcast on your pages and your groups and things like that. It gets people talking, and there may be somebody out there who recollects something which could be very helpful in solving Vera's murder. You know, and I've also long thought to myself that it's also quite possible that there could possibly be somebody out there who's very suspicious of somebody and they think they know who might have committed the murder. There may even be somebody out there who knows who killed Vera, and they may not have come forward as a result of loyalty or fear. And obviously, as time goes by, people's perception and their opinions on things and their allegiances and the loyalties change over the years. So it may prompt somebody to remember something that's vital for the case. It might prompt somebody to have the courage to come forward and say something to the police that they've not said before. And all I will say is, if you're listening to this show today and you do have any vital information about Vera's murder, you should give Crime Stoppers a call and report it to the police immediately. Okay, so that's it for today. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the show. My next show is going to be the unsolved case of Lisa Hessian. She was a young girl that was murdered in my hometown, Lee. So I've been wanting to cover that one for quite a while. And that crime's been unsolved since 1984. So I'm going to give you an account of Lisa's murder. And we're going to get that on the podcast next. So stay tuned for that. Okay. Anyway, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the show today. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel. It's always appreciated. Until next time, be good to one another. Have a great week ahead, and I'll see you soon.